Wow, that was amazing.
You both worked very hard.
Incredible.
Well, thank you for working so hard, too.
So, what'd you think of the final season?
For me, the games, I just loved them. The final three you chose for the season were all so suspenseful. The final game especially. It was almost like a psychological battle. You said it yourself, Director Wong. They feel like stage plays in a way. And I really like that about them.
In that last scene, the cameo.
That was a surprise.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, no one told me about it. At one point, someone I knew said, I heard a famous Hollywood actor's gonna be in the show. And I told them, oh, I don't know, I haven't heard anything about that. So I had my doubts. I didn't know who would be making a cameo, and I never thought it'd be someone so famous.
Yeah, that was a big secret this season, and we had to keep it to ourselves for such a long time.
In the end, though, because of scheduling, Kate Blanchett, she's one of my favorite actors, but I didn't even get to say hello. She and I shot that final scene separately. Since it's just the camera cutting back and forth between us, I couldn't say hi because once we shot it, we had to go.
Right. The timing just didn't work out.
Yeah, I was really sad about that.
So that was her first time playing Dakchi?
Oh, yeah, so the day we filmed, I saw her practicing over and over while we were setting up. She was pretty far away though, so I couldn't see her face clearly. She was practicing for a long time.
We sent her the Dakchi in advance, but she wasn't able to try it out much before the shoot. She had to hit the other Dakchi and flip it, but she couldn't get it. So I went over and gave her a quick lesson. Right then and there, the take we used. That was real.
She flipped it?
Yeah, you know, the tilt up from the Dakchi, where we first show her face. That confidence you see, that's all real. Because she'd finally managed to flip it over. And that's the take we used.
The thing about the frontman is, I never really considered the possibility that he'd make it to the end of the series. But that's what happens. He goes to the United States and meets Gi-yoon's daughter. And really, seeing him return all of Gi-yoon's things, as if he was keeping a promise to himself, I thought, well, on the one hand, it's a definitive ending, but...
You know what'd be cool? I want to see Frontman's whole life story told at some point. You know, before the events of the show, him going through the games, and then what happens to him after season 3. That's what I want. It could be its own show called Frontman.
I want to see it too. What do you say, Director Wong?
Well, hold on. We only just crossed the finish line with this series. So any kind of plans for a spin-off will probably have to come later. Let's let things settle first. Once we do, we can think about it.
You know, what I was most curious about as I read through the script was how it would all end. And then when I got to the last page, I saw Gi-yoon's final scene and I was a little surprised. I thought, oh, so this is it. This is the choice he made. I could feel Gi-yoon's state of mind. And when I look back and I think of all the different characters I've ever played or ever seen or read, what Gi-yoon does, it almost has this religious feel to it.
I really agonized over what Gi-yoon's ending should be. How can I give Gi-yoon a send-off that feels right for the series? I'd considered another ending too. What if Gi-yoon survives in the end and goes to meet his daughter? I thought, should he be the one to meet Gael? And also, should he be the one who meets the recruiter in the US? Should Gi-yoon see the game over there? But while writing seasons 1, 2, and 3 and seeing the path Gi-yoon ultimately ends up walking, understanding each and every beat of this character's emotional journey, I realized that by the time Gi-yoon's story was coming to a close, he had committed a sin during the game, in whatever shape or form. So in the end, I thought Gi-yoon showing us this symbolic message by sacrificing himself, as though he were in our place, was the most fitting conclusion to Squid Game. It's the ending that stayed the truest to the core character of Gi-yoon.
We are not horses. We are humans. And humans are...
I knew I wanted to end with "We are not horses, we are humans." But I wanted to continue with, as humans, this is what we should do. As humans, this is how we should be. And starting now, this is how we can turn this world of ours into a better one. But as I wrote that all out, it became clear I couldn't sum this up in a single line. People are far too complex to be defined categorically like that. And if I sent the viewers a message that was so explicit, so normative and didactic, it would actually only serve to limit the message itself. So I decided the rest of what I wanted to say would instead be expressed physically by Gyun, through his actions, through his deeds, and the sacrifice he makes to save that child.
I also thought, in that scene, if our message was complete, with nothing left to interpretation, then the audience would just leave it at that. They'd go, that's how it all ends. If we had gone that route, the story would have just had one single conclusion. But because we left the last part of the message open-ended, it feels like we're continuously communicating back and forth with the audience. So the end's a conversation. We throw you a question. This is what I think, but what do you think? I bet a lot of people are gonna see the final episode and realize, oh, this show is very different from the kind of stuff I'm used to seeing. The way I think about it is, how do I put it? Well, rather than presenting these themes obviously right on the surface, I felt like we took a more subtle approach with the ideas we wanted to explore. They sort of permeate the show. Under the surface, everything's carefully planned. So for that scene, I started by wondering, how am I gonna act this moment out? As the actor, do I need to convey the emotion more explicitly? Or instead, should I, like the writer, who's also our director, find a way through whatever kinds of different choices to make my performance in that final scene more open-ended? I was really torn about that. So we got all sorts of takes with varying levels of emotions when we shot that day, but it felt like there was no right answer.
Right. That scene wasn't really in search of a particular solution. I remember that in a few of the takes, you shed tears. But in my opinion, the take we used, the one you've all watched, I really think that was the take that matched what Gyun was feeling inside. By then, you'd also been on a diet for nearly a year. Then at the end, to look even more haggard, you went on an even stricter diet to show the progression from the start of the games. As a result, I think even without saying a word, those feelings were evident in your expression, your face, your outward appearance. That diet was tough, right?
Well, yeah, but what was worse,
You couldn't really eat with us.
when you get to share meals with your colleagues, I mean, yeah, that's your time to eat. But to be honest, those are really the times when you get to engage in conversations and bond with everyone. All those meals are important. That's one of the ways you grow closer to your castmates. But I didn't get to do that this time, and I regret missing out on that.
I thought you were secretly stuffing your face in your car. I had so many conversations with Director Wong as we were filming to try and really figure out what Frontman was thinking, what was going through his head. I wondered, what's Frontman thinking as he watches Gyun go through the games? Although, I'm not sure how much of that is really shown or made apparent in the show. But before the last game, when Frontman suggests to the VIPs that the child should become a participant as player 222, I did start to think that there was still this tiny part of me that genuinely cared about the baby and wanted to save its life. And watching Gyun, I think I probably felt a sense of inferiority almost. In the end, I became this terrible person, but Gyun stayed true to himself. Frontman saw all that. So I think one of the thoughts that probably dominated Frontman's mind, at least partly, was, in the end, you really did it. You accomplished what I couldn't. Then in the finale, when he's holding the baby, that's a very human moment. The kind of thing that might remind him of his past. That small beat there is maybe the first time we get a glimpse of his humanity.
For me, ultimately, even though I'm the one who wrote it, after everything, Frontman grabs all of Gyun's money, puts it into the account, grabs the card, and goes out of his way to deliver it to Gai Young, along with Gyun's bloody uniform. That was the moment that made me realize how complex the character was. He didn't just deliver the money, but the tracksuit too, and it wasn't even washed. He just gave it to her like that, with the blood still on it. Like, what's going on in his head?
Director Wong and I talked about that. How at the end, when viewers see that, they're going to start speculating about what his motivations are. So even though the season just wrapped, I'm curious. The few items that frontman gives to Gyun's daughter, how will that be interpreted? I bet there's gonna be a wide range of reactions.
I was just going to have Frontman give Gaiyang the money, but I realized it'd be nice if he also gave her Gyun's tracksuit. Because for Gyun, it was almost like a symbol. The money itself doesn't have any traces of him. So I wanted there to be something that Gyun had actually left behind. When given to his daughter, it holds a part of Gyun. His hard work, his struggle, his tears, his snot, even the blood from when he killed someone. When he killed Daeho, that soaked into the fabric. Gyun's entire history is in that green tracksuit. When his daughter gets it, it's exactly as it was. That was the
Yes,
thought.
but that could still be read in a number of ways. On the one hand, he made it a point to personally deliver not just the money, but her father's clothes too. Which makes me think he did it so she could figure out something bad had happened to him. So there's that. But on the other hand, looking at it another way, it's a very cruel thing to do to her.
It's true. That's
Going
another
to a young girl like that and just handing her the clothes her dad was wearing when he died that still had his blood on them. I thought that was pretty brutal.
In that way, I think it's safe to say he's a little frightening. Frontman is still kind of a scary guy. He shows up dressed like he's from a funeral home.
Right.
Dressed so well, delivering those things. There's a duality.
On a project, when I'm working as an actor, my character is driven, whether by the writer or the director, and I typically have a firm grasp of the person I'm portraying when I act. But with a character like Inho in Squid Game, I feel like I was constantly talking to director Wang. We were building this persona together right until end of production. So now, when I look back, I think, rather than speaking and acting with one singular emotion, there were actually multiple meanings and intentions behind every little thing he did and said. Even there in his office, when he hands Gyun that knife, I think there was a part of him that was really looking out for Gyun because he felt this kinship. But at the same time, he thinks that Gyun will eventually change, the same way he did all those years ago. But seeing Gyun fight against those impulses, I feel like he might have also felt somewhat inferior to him in comparison.
Player 456. He wants to see you.
The scene that takes place in Frontman's office, after Gyun is brought up to meet with him, that's a very important interaction between Gyun and Inho. When you think of the history that exists between these two men, at this point, it feels like it's been going on and on for ages. I mean, really, they only first met recently, but it still somehow feels like they've known each other for quite a while. We've seen them help each other, and we've seen them betray each other, and because of that, I really felt like these two characters had developed this long, storied history together, even if it hadn't really been that long. And so, when Inho sees Gyun step out of that elevator, I think his head must be swimming with all sorts of thoughts. And the same's true for Gyun, too. When Inho takes off the mask and Gyun sees who Frontman's been this whole time, all these emotions rise up. And then when Inho sees Gyun's reaction, he's got to think, what choice is he going to make? I think Inho's actually dying to know that. And of course, Gyun's thinking that too. What should I do? What choice do I make? Or even, why is he giving me this opportunity? Why is Inho forcing me to make this choice? So now you have these two very complex people sitting in this tiny room. All that tension, there's so much going on. I just love that whole scene.
You know, both when I was writing the script and when we shot that scene, honestly, starting when you two first interact in the limo, when Gyun's blindfolded and first hears "you people are horses," all the way up to when Jungbei is killed, I wondered how you would be able to express that, to show that evolution. Also, I thought Gyun might feel the need to stab Inho with the knife, right as soon as he had it. It was a delicate balancing act of competing emotions. The whole scene was tough to get right, both as a writer and a director, because of course Gyun was manipulated and betrayed without a doubt. But there were also moments where he trusted and relied on Inho. albeit briefly. So when he summons Gyun, unmasks himself, and makes him this offer, I figured that all those memories, those thoughts, and those feelings would well up at once, and Gyun would be so overwhelmed he would hesitate and not be able to do it. Then, well, like Inho said, in that moment, the most important thing is the child's life. It depends on him, on Inho's words. Getting all that across was key. It's the heart of the scene, and you both, well, you just saw it for yourself. Did such a fantastic job. At that point, Inho maybe wants Gyun just to give up, to stop being so stubborn, you know, harping on and on about humanity and get out with the baby, who he wants to save. The biggest difference between Gyun and Inho is perhaps that while Inho was on the inside playing the games, he never met someone like her, someone like Sebyok. Gyun, because he did meet her, was able to retain his humanity. I actually think that's the most important moment in all of Season 1. Gyun, he's about to kill Sang-woo, who's fallen asleep. He pulls out the knife, he's about to walk over, but Sebyok stops him. She uses the same exact lines. That isn't you. You're a good person at heart. I thought those words were incredibly important for someone to tell him. You're a good person at heart. I thought that line was what finally reminded Gyun of his humanity. Those words, they brought to the surface the last shred of his humanity, which Gyun had nearly let go of. And I think because they came from Sebyok, who had seemed so cold, but was honest and ultimately good, the words meant that much more, and really resonated in Gyun's heart. Now that he's in this situation again, he's given that same choice. And although Sang-woo was a horrible person, when Gyun's faced with killing again, just like he was before, he might recall Sebyok's words, the same ones that stopped Gyun in his tracks in the first season. So I added the scene where he sees her again. I had to pull Gyun back. And I thought that beat was the most pivotal moment of Season 1. So that's what Gyun needed to recall here, to help him stay true to who he was once again. It just seemed right.
Mister. Don't do it. That isn't you. You're a good person at heart.
Well, in that scene, I see myself in Gyun, and I think if someone said to me, "You're a good person at heart," right at the moment I was about to go down the wrong path, or maybe right as I was about to make the wrong decision in life, if someone had set me straight, put me on the right path earlier, then perhaps I could have stayed on the straight and narrow. Which is why, like Director Huang said earlier, if Inho had met someone back then, while he was in there playing the games, someone like Sebyok, things could have gone differently. There's a chance that Inho never would have become frontman in that reality. It's an interesting thought.
Inho! Why? Why'd you do it?
In this story, in the fictional world of Squid Game, the game is hosted by a specific group of people, but it's really a metaphor for the real world. A world in which capitalism drives relentless competition. So until all that stops, this game isn't going to stop. We see that the game in Korea, with Gyun's sacrifice, does come to an end. But I wanted to say, in other places though, the game is still going. Because really, the world at large hasn't changed yet. It's still the same. Plus, if we wrapped everything up, we'd have no reason to come back. And I don't think the fans would like that.
Squid Game.
It was originally a children's game that was played in Korea many years ago.
I think the Squid Games were the most memorable for me. There's the Squid Game I play with Sang-woo in Season 1, and then the Sky Squid Game we played in Season 3. Those two games, they're the ones that have the most shifts psychologically. And when you factor in how all the other players would react, it creates so much tension.
That last game was the toughest, physically as a director.
Out of everything?
Oh, yeah. The shoot itself, you know, well, it's the end. It's the grand finale. We're bringing the whole series to a close. So much pressure. I mean, the game itself is honestly very simple. But there's also lots of discussion, lots of back and forth. So making that fun, building tension each time a player falls, and then, of course, the twist. I was nervous about the whole thing, because it was all in front of the blue screens. So we had to imagine that sensation of height and how it was going to come across. I had to think about that while framing all the shots, too. It was difficult. Very, very taxing throughout. Because I got so ambitious with that scene. I wanted it to be perfect. And I was low on energy, so it wasn't easy.
I think, well, as a viewer, the six-legged pentathlon really stood out to me. That game was such a great idea, because the players, they know they have to kill each other, but there they have to work together. So you're able to see all these different sides to everyone. The concept of that game really stuck with me. I thought the six-legged pentathlon was a great addition. It was also an important opportunity for Frontman. It gave him a real chance to demonstrate the kind of person he used to be before he had experienced the games as Inho. He gets to openly show his emotions. He feels happy, excited, scared, just like all the other players. So even when we shot that scene, Director Huang and I agonized over to what extent I should let those emotions come through in my performance. But there are still so many fun moments, looking back at it.
The one scene where you slap yourself in the face, that made me crack up.
For me, it's spinning top. Winding it, then you go, hold on, give me some room. It just felt so natural.
Oh, shit.
I hadn't given much thought to seasons 2 or 3 before writing them, so I started thinking, weighing all my options. But once I got going, the most interesting and important part was the entrance and exit of Inho. When the idea came to me, to have him be the last person to vote, just like old Ilnam, and in doing so, determine the outcome of the whole thing, I thought, this is it. I agonized over his exit too, how he'd go. I wrote one version where he left later, staying till hide and seek, but killing Jungbei, then leaving the games. I thought that was the cruelest option, while faking his own death. So I wrote that, and plot-wise, those moments created major turning points, which determined the larger story, an overall arc of seasons 2 and 3. And well, the most important decision in season 3 was to give birth, to have the baby be born, and to give Gi-yoon his mission to protect it, and finally save the baby by sacrificing himself. Everything led me there. When I finally landed on that idea, I realized, it was all for this. It was to tell this story. That's why I started those years ago. First writing Squid Game back then, and now I've made it all the way here. And because of that, when I came up with the idea, I remember I felt pretty proud of myself and couldn't help but get emotional about it.
Let's see, to be honest, well, I think the beginning of the story is so important. To me, it feels sort of necessary to see the situation Gi-yoon's in. We need a moment to understand the circumstances that led him to enter into the games, and also what he has in his life that might give him this hope that if he goes in and plays, things might actually take a turn for the better. We get to ask, why does this man need that hope? So, when you have that premise, that initial setup from the first scene where Gi-yoon calls to join the game, then what that sets into motion, what gets expanded on from there, now that we've come all the way to season 3, it all seems very sad.
With Sang-woo's death, too, I felt a sense of loss and sadness. I mean, Sang-woo's a realist. He's smart, he's very calculating, and in a sense, even his death, I'd say it's very rational, too. If he takes Gi-yoon's hand, puts an end to the games, that means he'll end up back in hell, back to being broke with Gi-yoon, back to a mountain of debt. So he has that side, this rational, calculating side that leads him to take his own life, so Gi-yoon can leave with the money. That's why he can take such extreme measures. Lots of people actually bring this up. After they let everyone go, after the vote, they all end up coming back to the game because they're cornered by the hell of reality. In these kinds of stories, usually the players are trapped and it ends with them dreaming of escape. But here, there's a democratic process. They can actually leave if they want to. But they still come back because the reality of the outside world's even harsher. So, in the end, the game in our show, it's not unique or special, but it's symbolic because it's no different from the reality that many people face in the real world. And within this genre, this structure and these themes, they aren't common. Not really. And because of that, it stands out. It occurred to me that many viewers thought highly of the show as a result. because that aspect surprised them.
All the characters' different circumstances, what led them to join the games of their own accord. Looking back now, I think to me, that's the saddest part of the story.
That's why I told you to get on that plane. Why'd you come back?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Player 456. Do you still have faith in people?
I hope that after watching this series, everyone can find people like Sebyok who will tell you you're a good person at heart. People who will treat you with compassion, who will look at you and see goodness inside. People whose words demonstrate the respect they have for you. People like that are so important, so valuable. They're how we get through life without losing our way, without losing ourselves. People who are down to earth, who ground us, who when we find ourselves trapped in our own game, help us escape and make sure we're okay. So surround yourselves with people like that and become that person for others. That's what I hope you take away from this series in the end.
For me, while we were filming, I started to realize that different stories about your conscience, which only you really know, might be spread out across this story of ours in many places. So I think anytime you're making a decision, whether you make a good one or you make a bad one, it all depends on what's inside, on your conscience. And when you have all these characters together like this, encountering the same situation, you see that these very different kinds of people with different states of mind and degrees of conscientiousness, in each episode of the series, they make different choices. And out of everyone, I thought that Gi-yoon often makes the conscientious ones. All through the show, with every action, he's got this strong faith in the choices he makes. He tries to stand by all his decisions. Looking at us and our day-to-day lives, trying to keep your conscience in mind, making sure you're living conscientiously. It's really a very simple, easy thing to do when you think about it. But because we're human, we get swayed by temptation. And all too often, we crack and make mistakes or fail as a result. And I realized that being able to have so many different opportunities to reflect on our own conscience would be really beneficial and powerful in a way.
I also think that because of Squid Game and the success of the series, there are probably some actors that international fans are seeing for the first time. I'm sure it's true with Director Wong too, looking him up and watching all of his previous work. So when new projects come out that members of our cast are in, or that Director Wong has worked on, I'd love for our fans to give them a watch too.
Great work, guys.
Thank you for all the hard work.
It's so weird because it really does feel like it's ending now. It's been such a wild journey for me. It's hard to say goodbye.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the viewers. The support you've shown for Squid Game has been truly incredible. The amount of love you've given us is almost hard to comprehend. It's beyond anything we imagined.
It's been so long since I first started writing this show. Over a decade. From first bringing you season 1 to finishing the finale of season 3. 6 whole years have passed in between. To Squid Game fans all over the world, I want to thank you so much for watching, for cheering us on, for sending us love throughout this journey.
Even though for now we have to say goodbye, we promise we'll be back. I'm sure you'll see us return with all sorts of different projects of our own.
I hope you don't forget us. You have so many content options to choose from, but I selfishly hold out hope that you keep a special place for Squid Games in your heart for years to come.
Thank you for everything.
To everyone out there who's loved and supported Squid Game, thank you all so much.
Your love has been so incredible. I can't thank you enough.